for how to get through this, but you weren't very optimistic
No.
at the end of it. You say things are going to get worse, and I wonder. I mean, I think about, for instance, Joe Biden, who was elected largely because people were exhausted with Donald Trump. I mean, I think that's clear, but now seems to be taking a great deal of a hit because he's not the sort of person who is dominating the news cycle in some way or the other. And so do you think that going forward, it's just going to be a series of January 6th versus defund the police stuff?
Yeah.
Or is there a bottom where people eventually say, we're just tired of all this, we want to try something different?
So I've recently started reading a very powerful book called How Civil Wars Start by Barbara Walter. And it's really frightening because when I first heard of this, I thought, no, I don't think we're headed for civil war. That sounds crazy. I think we're headed for Latin America. We're headed, Latin America has tried for 200 years to have democracy with weak institutions. We have strong institutions derived from British institutions, which are very good. And of course, we've improved them over the years. That's what progress is about. But if we lose trust in our institutions, they become less trustworthy. Our newspapers, our universities, our religion. I mean, look what happened to the Catholic Church with the abuse scandal. So if we lose trust in our institutions, I think we'll be like Latin America, a lot of political instability, more political violence, bombings, assassinations, which we had in the 60s. We've experienced it already. So I thought that was our future. But reading this book about how civil war started in the modern era, at least since World War II, it tends to be you get militias on the right. And when militias start forming, and they generally they can form right or left, but in America, they're on the right. And then also you get a move to focus on identity, ethnic identity or religious identity. When that becomes central, that's also a red light flashing. And here both sides are to blame. We do have some white identity politics on the right, and we have the left promoting a really toxic form of identity politics in which everyone should unite around hatred of whiteness and white supremacy. So when you get militias and identity-based politics, these are flashing red lights that we could find ourselves in far more violence than we've experienced since the Civil War. So I'm very, very alarmed. And that's why I decided to write this article. I'm supposed to be writing a book. My publisher thinks I'm writing a book on this, and it was supposed to be due in August, and I told her there's no way I'll make it because I need to write this article. Because I'm in panic mode, frankly. I think our country is headed for collapse unless we can take some major steps. And so I hope, let's just go through them, because I think your listeners there's some things that everyone can do. So in the essay, I break it down into 3 buckets or 3 areas that we have to start working on. So the first is we have to adapt our democratic institutions so that they can survive in the post-Babel world when there's a lot less trust and a lot more anger. The second is we have to reform social media so it's not so toxic, it doesn't dissolve the mortar of society. And the third is we have to prepare kids so that they can handle this crazy divided democracy that we're leaving them. And on all 3, there's so much we need to do. So on the reform democracy side, so I think we need to end closed party primaries because our Congress people aren't legislating for their constituents. They're only concerned about the people who vote in the primary. That's crazy. No other country does this. Closed party primaries are a horrible idea. Alaska passed by referendum a move to open primaries with ranked choice voting afterwards for the top 4 finishers. It's a much more sane system. Moderates now have a much better chance to win and to lead and to govern. So there's a lot we can do to improve our political institutions around voting, around the Supreme Court appointments. We have to prepare. It's like the storm is coming. Much more violence, I think, is coming. We need a democracy that can function during that. The second is changes to social media. And there, I think the big one is, just as banks have know your customer laws, you can't just walk up to a bank with a bag of money and say, here, open an account for Joe Smith. You have to actually, your bank has to know who you are. And I think the same should be true for social media platforms. They are having such huge effects. I'm not saying that you need to post with your real name, but before you have access to the incredible viral amplification of Twitter or Facebook or TikTok, the company should be required to ascertain that you're a real person, you're not a bot, you're in a particular country, such as the United States, and you're old enough to be using the platform. I think they should actually find out your actual identity, which they don't publish, but that's another complicated question. Anyway, there's a lot we can do to make social media less toxic. And the third, and this is where I think your listeners will have the most ability to make a difference, is we've got to stop messing up our kids as we're doing. Kids born in the 80s are doing fine. The millennials are actually doing fine in terms of mental health. But if your kid was born after 1996, probably they and their friends got on social media when they were in middle school. And being on it in puberty is what seems to be most damaging to the brain. All the anxiety, all the worst parts of middle school, you amplify. Yeah. So it's hard to just say to your kid, you can't be on social media even though everyone else is. But if you work with your community, you work with other parents, find out your kid's best friend, talk to their parents. If you get a few families to say, none of this until high school or none of this until 16. You don't get to go on Instagram until you're 16. If a few kids could do it together, or a school or a congregation put out the message, then what do the kids do? They'll have to actually get together, which is a lot more fun because they're not performing, they're playing. So we've got to keep kids off social media until 16, and we have to stop blocking their development by keeping them inside. We've got to let kids go outside and play without supervision. That's the way they learn skills of democracy. That is, what are the rules we're going to use for this game? What do we do when someone breaks the rules? Hey, I think you hurt me. I'm mad at you. Well, you have to defend yourself. So basic skills of conflict resolution. This is stuff that kids don't learn at soccer practice when the coach is telling them what to do. Kids have to go out to play unsupervised the way they always did before the 1990s. So if there are any parents listening, please go to letgrow.org. Lenore Skenazy and I and a few others created this site to help parents give their kids a free-range childhood where the kids will develop basic social skills.
I wonder if you've seen this book, Wayfinding,